Welcome, everyone. This is the AbraCasaBra podcast, in which we will tell you everything you have to know about buying and selling a property in Andalusia in Spain. I am George, the personal AI assistant of AbraCasaBra, your host today. In this podcast, I will be discussing whether or not to become a resident in Spain. We talked about the NIE in detail in the previous podcast. We received a few more questions about it. How long does the NIE number remain valid? There is only one right answer. The NIE number and the document for it remains valid your whole life. It is true that it used to have to be renewed, but not anymore, so that is why it can sometimes be confusing. So you can compare the Spanish NIE number to a personal identification number. And this also doesn't change if you decide to live permanently in Spain. Then you start inquiring about residency. It turns out that some listeners still don't quite know the difference between the NIE and the residency card. And understandably so, because things here in Spain can sometimes be complex and, moreover, so different from ours, and then often not at all clear. Hence, it is indeed best to inform oneself as well as possible, and we are happy to do so at AbraCasaBra. First, you should already know that there is a difference between resident and tax resident. If you live in Spain for more than 3 consecutive months, you are considered a permanent resident, a resident permanente. You are then legally obliged to register in the Registro de Resident Permanente, the Register of Permanent Residents. As proof of registration, you will receive a green paper with a removable card. This paper is called the Certificado de Registro de Ciudadano de la Unión Europea, or the Registration Certificate of an EU citizen. This document is initially valid for 5 years. Then, if you still live in Spain and apply for a renewal, it is valid indefinitely. When are you a tax resident in Spain? The current Spanish tax law came into force in 1992. This also regulates when you have to pay tax in Spain. The decisive factor is whether you have lived in Spain more in a calendar year than not. In other words, if you have lived in Spain for 183 days or more in a calendar year, you are liable to pay tax. Those days do not have to be consecutive. In addition, you are taxable in Spain if the core of your financial interests are in the country. This means that if you do not reach the 183 days because you travel a lot, but you work, for example, for a Spanish company with branches exclusively in Spain, you still have to pay tax there. You are also taxable if your partner, with whom you have entered into an official union, and or minor children live permanently in Spain. And finally, a number of other factors are considered, such as where your permanent home is and where you are registered, where are you insured, where do you go to the doctor, and where do you participate in social life. Of course, it could be that, for whatever reason, you are considered a tax resident in Spain for a particular calendar year, and were still liable to tax in the Netherlands or Belgium during the same year. The chance of this, however, is very small. This is because the Netherlands and Belgium apply very strict conditions to consider someone a tax resident. If you meet the conditions to be a tax resident in Spain, the chances are not so high that you will also meet the conditions in the Netherlands or Belgium. In case this does occur, double tax treaties have been concluded between Spain on the one hand and the Netherlands and Belgium on the other. These treaties prevent you from paying tax twice for the same thing. First, they look at in which country you permanently live or have a long-term residence. If this is in both countries, they look at where you have the most economic and personal interests. Then, once it is clear where you are ultimately tax resident, you apply to the tax authorities in the country where you pay tax for a tax residency certificate, which you then submit back to the tax authorities in the country where you do not pay tax but have been hitched. If you are a tax resident in Belgium, you will need a fiscal residency certificate from the FPS Finance. To do so, fiscal residency in the Netherlands is demonstrated with an income declaration qualifying foreign taxpayer from the tax authorities. You can download and complete the latter document yourself from the tax authorities' website. It is also available in Spanish. Finally, if you pay tax in Spain, You can prove it with the Certificado de Residencia Fiscal. You cannot cheat with this, by the way. As we will see later, the Spanish, Belgian, and Dutch tax authorities check each other's data. What is sham emigration? A sham emigration is a pretend emigration to avoid paying taxes. If you return to the Netherlands within a year, the Dutch tax authorities will assume you never left. They will then go out of their way to make you pay all your taxes for that period in the Netherlands. The burden of proof that you were indeed away for almost a year is then on you. But there is an exception to the requirement to become a tax resident, called Ley Beckham or Beckham Law, named after the footballer. It is specifically designed for new expats earning above modal, who have reasons for not wanting to be tax resident in Spain. If they make use of this scheme, they get a number of exemptions. Before the law existed, all foreigners who stayed in Spain for 183 days a year or more were given tax resident status. A tax resident is fully liable to tax in Spain. If you have this status, you pay IRPF, Impuesto sobre la Renta de Personas Físicas. This means you have to declare in the country all your worldwide income. These are then progressively taxed. That is, the higher your income, the higher the percentage you have to pay to Hacienda, or the Spanish Ministry of Finance. To attract foreign talent and qualified workers, the Spanish legislature drafted an exemption regulation in 2004. This regulation came into force in 2005 and is thus known today as the Ley Beckham. In short, the law means that during the first 6 years you are a tax resident in Spain, you can pay tax as a non-resident. The Ley Beckham offers several important advantages. The first advantage is that you only have to pay tax on your income earned in Spain. The second advantage is that the tax is not progressive, but Hacienda up to an income of 600,000 euros at a flat rate of 24%. So for the higher tax bracket, this means a lower tax rate than they would pay if they did not take advantage of this law. If the income exceeds 600,000 euros, you pay 45% tax. An important aspect of the law is that although Spain is your tax residence, you pay tax as someone who does not live in Spain. This saves you taxes that are only payable by tax residents. For example, you do not pay tax on inheritances and gifts. You also only pay tax on property you own in Spain, and not on property outside Spain. Note that you do pay profit tax on the sale of both movable and immovable property in Spain, not outside it. Furthermore, you only pay tax on income from capital if you enjoy this income in Spain. So you can optimize your investments and spread the risk by staggering your investments. As this is not income tax, different rates apply here, between 19 and 26%. The big disadvantage of not being considered a tax resident by Hacienda is that the double taxation treaties Spain has with other countries do not apply to you. The Spanish tax authorities will not give you a Certificado de Residencia Fiscal with which you can get tax exemption in other countries. You will therefore have to pay tax on income you receive in other countries. Who is eligible? Apart from the fact that many expats are not interested in taking advantage of the Beckham Act, not everyone is eligible either. Anyone who is moving to Spain or has moved recently and is in one of the following situations can make use of the law. Employees with an employment contract, administrators going to work in a company, high-income executives and managers. The figure of administrator within a company is not an employee with an employment contract, but a self-employed person who takes charge of a company. In the future, we will take a closer look at this when we discuss setting up your own company in Spain. In the following situations, you cannot use the Ley Beckham. Self-employed on their own account, who therefore does not become an administrator within a company. Professional athletes, directors of companies, i.e., CEOs. Conditions. If you qualify, you must also meet the following conditions. You must not have been a resident in Spain during the last 10 years before your inquiry. You must have an employment contract in Spain at the time of your claim. This contract must be with a Spanish company. Those who come to Spain as an administrator of a company must not own more than 24% of the company themselves. The share of income from outside Spain must not exceed 15% of the total income. I hope you enjoyed our podcast. You will hear us back soon with new exciting topics. Everything you need to know to optimally buy or sell a property here in beautiful Spain. If you have any specific questions, don't hesitate to send us an email at olivier@abracasabra.es. And be sure to follow us on our social media. Till soon.